Hey guys, this is Mitch with FinePoint CGI, and today we're going to talk about how to create a custom node inside of Godot. So we're going to be going through the process of creating a custom node using the Godot plugin system. We're going to talk about how custom nodes are created and some of the use cases for custom nodes, such as instancing in scenes or maybe in the editor and maybe doing some fancy code there. And this video is going to be part of a small little editor plugin series that I'm going to be doing. So right after this video, probably next week or maybe in a few days, I will be putting out a how to create a docked add-on as well. So you can actually have, things in your editor. You can actually extend your editor. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we have to create our plugin. So this whole system relies on the Godot tool system, and we need to go ahead and create a plugin for Godot so that way we can add our custom nodes. So what we'll do is we'll go up to project setting, go ahead and click create. From here, we can create our plugin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name it tutorial plugin. And our folder will just be tutorial plugin. For author, you can put whatever you'd like. I can put FinePoint CGI. And for our language, we have a bunch of options here. We can actually use native script, GD script, or visual script. In my case, we're going to use GD script. If you guys want to use a different language, you guys are more than welcome to. The nice thing about this is that depending on your integrations, you can actually use any script. So if you were to use, for instance, C#, like if you had the mono version of Godot, you could use that. Or if you had the Python version of Godot, you could use Python. So that's kind of the nice thing about it. But be warned that if it is in like C#, people that don't have C# or the mono version of Godot are not going to be able to use your plugin. Now for script name, we'll just call it tutorial plugin.gd, and we'll go ahead and click create. Now, what's going to happen is Godot is going to create a folder and a add-on folder and a folder called whatever your plugin's name is. And then it's going to create a GD script here. Now, this script is how we define how Godot works while this node is in your editor. Now, this script extends the editor plugin. So what this script is for is it's for us to describe what we want this tool to do. Okay. And you can actually make it do a lot of things. And what I mean by that is you can come in here and tell Godot to make it a editor script, or you could make it a doc, or you could make it a node or something like that. So this basically describes what your plugin does. It's not the actual functionality of the plugin. It's what this plugin is in relation to Godot. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a custom type because we are creating a node, right? We'll be creating a doc and things like that in a future tutorial, probably next week or the week after. So we'll be covering this. But for right now, let's just add a custom type, okay? Now, the custom type has a bunch of options here, okay? The first option is what we're going to name our custom type. So we'll just call it example type. We'll just call it example, actually. The next one is what is the base class of this node? So what I'm going to say is node2d. And what that's going to do is that's going to give us access to the node2d code set inside of Godot. It's also going to organize to put our node underneath node2d. So that's something to keep in mind. If we do another comma, the next one is our script. What script are we going to be running with our new custom type? Now, we don't actually have a script, right? So let's go ahead and build a script real quick. So we'll right click our tutorial plugin. We'll say new script, and we'll just call it tutorial node script, and we will click create. Now, I'm not going to go in depth into that script just yet, but we have to have it at least created. So now from here, we can say preload, and we can preload our script. So we'll just say, quote, tutorial node script, .gd, and then we'll say comma, and we have to come up with an icon. Now, in my case, we don't actually have an icon, so what we'll do is we'll say preload, and we will preload our icon. Now, one thing about preload that's really cool is if you just do preload and then you do a path like this, it's based off of your script path. Whereas if you say res, it's based off of your scene path or off of your file system path. So that's something to keep in mind that's super useful. So you can see that I'm not directly referencing where this object is located. So as long as this folder is somewhere inside of Godot and these two things are next to each other, they'll reference each other. Whereas this has to be directly right here or else it's not going to work. Now that we have our custom type, we have to remove our custom type. So we'll say remove custom type in our exit tree. And we got to do our name, so we'll say example. Now, one of the things that is cool about this system is when Godot starts, when this plugin is enabled, it's going to run this function here, okay? And when the plugin is disabled, it's going to run this right here, okay? So the enter tree is when we enable our plugin, and the exit tree is when we disable our plugin. Now that could be on Godot start, it could be on Godot close, it could be when we hit the check mark or we remove the check mark in our project. So those are the ways to get this code to run. And this code will run on your editor, and you can do all sorts of crazy stuff. You could do stuff like instancing things and running a bunch of things or changing stuff inside of the Godot editor as soon as this plugin loads, though a lot of people probably wouldn't like that. But you could do it here if you wanted to. Now, if we head over to our tutorial node script, you'll see that we have our thing that says extends node. It says ready, pass, and then our function, just like regular Godot. But what we need to do is first up here, we need to type tool, and that tells Godot that this code is going to run in the editor. Now, this code also will run out of the editor as well. So like when you're playing your game, it will run as well, but this code's going to run in the editor as well. So it's something to keep in mind. So we'll say it extends node 2D because that's what we wanted it to extend, right? We told it in our plugin here that we wanted it to extend node 2D. So we got to make sure that it extends node 2D. And to demonstrate it running in the editor, let's come in here and let's uncomment our function process delta. And let's just say rotation degrees plus equals 180 multiplied by delta right here in our process. What this is going to do is when we add in the node, it's going to be spinning in the editor and in game. So if we go and create our root node 2D and we come up to our project settings and we disable and enable our plugin, because you have to do that to get it to reload our plugin, go ahead and click close, right click our node 2D, add in a child node. And if we open up our node 2D and we scroll down, you'll see that we have our example plugin right here. So we're going to go ahead and double click that, and you'll see that we have a spinning little plugin. So if we actually right click this, add in a child node, add in a sprite, and then we add in an icon, you'll see that it is spinning with our node in our editor. So that's something to keep in mind, is that we don't necessarily want that code to be running during our editor time, because let's say we have some complicated UI or some complicated AI or something like that. We might not want that to run at editor time, right? If we hit play and we run this, so if I save this and I run, you'll see that it does run in the game as well. So that's something to keep in mind. So the code that's in here will run in editor time and run in game time as well. Now, if we don't want it to run in editor time, what we can do is we can say if engine.editor underscore hint, then go ahead and do this. Now this will only run in the editor time. So if I go to my project settings, I disable, re-enable my tutorial plugin. Let's unparent that sprite, delete our example node, right click, add in a child node, type example, add that in, and then throw our sprite in there, you'll see that it spins. But if we hit play, it does not spin. So what this does is it says if it is in editor, then rotate it 180 degrees. If we say not, if not editor hint, then when we delete this, we go to project settings, enable, disable, or I guess disable, enable, right click, add in a child node, add in our example, and then add in our sprite. And then we go ahead and add in our icon. You'll notice that it's not spinning, but if I hit play, you'll see that it is spinning. So that's how we can manage our custom nodes code in editor and out of editor. So next, we're going to go ahead and instance a scene using a node. Now, this is super useful if you have an element that you want to reuse over and over and over and over and over, but you don't necessarily want to have to drag it up here. You just want to be able to right click, add child node, and then just add your scene. It's super useful if you want something, simple and extendable, right? So what we can do is we can right click our tutorial plugin, create a new scene, and let's just call it tutorial scene, and let's create a new 2D scene, add in a child node, add in a sprite. Let's add in another child node. Let's add in something like maybe a button. Maybe we'll kind of make it about yay big. We'll kind of drag the Godot icon on the sprite, and we'll just kind of put it over here, drag our button to somewhere like this. And then let's say, on node 2D, attach a script. Let's just call it tutorial scene. Sure, that's fine. Click on our button, go to node, button down, and then let's click connect. And then let's just say print, it works, exclamation point. And what we can do from here is we can just call this our, tutorial scene. And there we go. So from here, we can go to our node tutorial script here. We can go ahead and comment this out. So we'll hit Control K to comment this out. And then we need to use a new function here. And the function is going to be called enter tree, much like the custom node tutorial script, right? This script, enter tree and exit tree are both useful for running something when it's in editor time, right? It runs when it enters the tree. Now, something to keep in mind is that this code will also technically run when it's instanced into a scene as well. It's whenever it enters the tree. So that's something to keep in mind, is that we're going to need to code against that. Now, if we head back to our tutorial node script here and we say func underscore enter tree, and we go ahead and just print test like so, when we come into our project settings, we disable our add-on, enable our add-on, close it. Let's go ahead and go back to our node 2D scene, right click, add in a child node, and then let's add in our example plugin here. You'll see it says test right here. See? And if we hit play, you'll see it also says test. So that's something to keep in mind. So we're going to need to make sure that we code against that, right? We don't want it to instance it twice. So what we can do is, of course, do our if engine dot editor underscore hint, and then we can go ahead and run our code from there. So that's just something that we're going to need to make sure that we code against. So now let's go ahead and instance our scene, right? So first up here, we're going to say var tutorial scene, and we'll say colon packed scene is equal to preload, and then we're going to preload our scene. Now we can either directly reference it like so and just say tutorial scene, if we just rename this and just copy the name, tutorial scene, that will work, or we can do a full reference if we want to. So now what we can do is we can say var tutorial scene is equal to tutorial scene.instance, and that will allow us to instance our scene. So now what we have to do is we need to add our scene as a child object. So we can say add underscore child, and we can add in a child of our tutorial scene. Now, when we are trying to instance a scene inside of the editor, we need to tell the editor that that scene exists. We need to actually, I'm not quite sure why, but the ownership system is a little bit different when you instance a scene in the editor versus when you instance a scene inside of the game itself. So what you need to do is you need to say tutorial scene dot set owner, and then we need to go ahead and say get tree dot get underscore edited underscore scene underscore root. And what that's going to do is that's going to pull back the scene's root right here in the editor system. So now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and test this. So we'll hit Control S and we will go ahead and delete our node. And I'm going to clear my errors and see if I have any errors when I try to enable this add-on. So disable it, enable it, hit close. We will right click our node 2D. We're going to add a child and you'll see that we have our example. So we'll add that and you'll see that it spawns in our tutorial scene, which is perfect, right? And if we move this object over somewhere like here and we hit play, you'll see that it doesn't spawn a second version of that scene. So that's great. And if we click, you can see it works. Perfect. So that allows us to have a example project or an example scene, I guess you could say, that we can spawn using the add child. So it makes our stuff extremely flexible. If you want to think of some super cool use cases, let's say you want to add an ocean, right? And you want to share that with all of your friends or all of the people in the Godot community. Instead of saying, okay, well, now you got to drag this scene up here and then you can place your ocean and things like that. Instead, you can just right click, add child node, and then type in, ocean or whatever, and then it would come up as a node inside of Godot. So it's really cool and super flexible. Now, what if we don't want this here? What if we just want to spawn in our scene? So just like regular in-game, queue-free works just like you would expect. So what we can do is we can come into our tutorial node script here, and we can just tell it to remove itself. So instead of adding a child, what we could do is we could say get underscore parent dot add child to our scene, and then once we're done, we can say queue free. And that will basically allow us to do that. So if we go to project settings, we disable and then re-enable, close it, right click, add in a child node, and we add in our example node, you'll see it adds in our tutorial scene without our example node. Now, the nice thing about this is if I add in, for example, a node 2D and I move it somewhere over here, right? And then I right click our node 2D and I add in a child node and then I added my example node like so, it will spawn it right here, just like you would expect a regular node to inside of Godot. But that is all I have for you guys today. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button because I am here to make content for you guys. This video, as with most of my videos, are viewer suggested. So if you have any suggestions, please throw them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to add it to my Trello board. Link is in the description for that. And I will get to it as soon as I can. And if you have any questions about this or any comments, you just want to tell me that I'm bad at coding, leave them in the comments below. Or you can jump on the Discord and hit me up there, and I'll be more than happy to help you with any questions that you might have. But that is all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.